The stars had never seemed so close. Ambassador David Chen stood at the observation deck of Unity Station and watched ships from 47 different worlds drift past like schools of fish. Some looked like crystals that caught the light. Others moved on wings that shouldn't work in space. A few were just geometric shapes that hurt to look at for too long. It had been 3 years since humanity discovered faster-than-light travel. 3 years since they learned they were not alone. The galaxy had opened its arms and humanity had rushed forward with eager hearts. Chen smiled as a group of Thalian diplomats walked past. They looked like tall birds with forearms and feathers that changed color with their moods. The lead Thalian, Ambassador Kriash, nodded at him. Her feathers showed purple and gold, which meant respect and friendship. "Ambassador Chen," she said in perfect English, "your people's music is beautiful. We played the recordings you gave us at our cultural center. 3 million Thalians listened." Chen felt warmth in his chest. "I'm glad. We have so much more to share." And they did share. Humanity brought medicine that cured diseases the Concordat had suffered for centuries. They brought art, stories, and a strange thing the other species didn't quite understand but found fascinating. Hope mixed with stubbornness. Other species had grown old in the stars. They had settled into comfortable patterns. Humans were young and excited about everything. The Galactic Concordat had rules, of course. No wars between member species. Free trade. Mutual defense. Protection of developing worlds. Humanity signed every treaty with enthusiasm. They built embassies on a dozen worlds. Human children learned alien languages in schools on Earth. Alien students came to human universities. Chen remembered the day humanity was formally welcomed. The Great Assembly Hall on Concordat Prime, with representatives from every member species. The Secretary General of Earth had given a speech about peace and brotherhood. Chen had translated it into 6 different languages. Everyone had applauded. Everyone except the Vraxians. Chen's smile faded as he thought about them. The Vraxians looked like insects standing upright, covered in black armor-like shells. They had 4 arms and eyes that saw in directions humans couldn't imagine. Their empire was old and powerful. They had conquered 12 species before joining the Concordat. The Vraxians called humans soft ones. They said it with clicks and hisses that sounded like laughter. "You have no shell," Vraxian Ambassador Thexazar had told Chen once. "Your skin tears easily. Your bones break. You are weak and you don't even know it." Chen had tried to explain that humans were strong in other ways, that they had survived ice ages and plagues and wars on their own world. But Thexazar had just clicked his mandibles and walked away. The Vraxians began testing human borders. Small raids on mining stations, ships that vanished near Vraxian space. Each time Chen brought complaints to the Concordat Assembly. Each time Thexazar claimed it was a misunderstanding. Pirates, not Vraxian military. Navigation errors, accidents. The Concordat always accepted these explanations. They had kept peace for 3,000 years by not looking too closely at small problems. Then the attacks got worse. A human colony on Kepler 186 reported Vraxian ships in orbit. Chen demanded action. The Concordat sent observers. By the time they arrived, the Vraxians were gone. So were 300 colonists. "Where are our people?" Chen had demanded. "Perhaps they evacuated," Thexazar suggested. "Your species is known for panic, but they hadn't evacuated." Wreckage floating in orbit told that story. Chen pushed harder. He called in favors. He made speeches. Other ambassadors listened with sympathy but did nothing. The Thalians said they were sorry. The crystalline gene offered thoughts and prayers. The massive Goroth said that border disputes were complicated. No one wanted to confront the Vraxians. Then came Jarn Colony. 2.3 million people lived there. It was humanity's largest settlement outside Earth's solar system. They had been there for 15 years, building cities and farms and schools. They had families, children. The Vraxians came with 200 warships. They didn't demand surrender. They didn't issue warnings. They just began firing. The attack lasted 6 hours. Vraxian ships broadcast every moment across the galactic network. They wanted everyone to see. They burned the cities from orbit. They destroyed evacuation ships. When human defense forces finally arrived, there was nothing left but ash and radiation. Not a single person survived. The Vraxians sent a message afterward. Addressed to Earth, "The soft ones break easily. This is your warning. Leave Vraxian space. Leave the border worlds. Go back to your tiny planet or we will come there next. Chen watched the recordings in his quarters. He saw cities burning. He saw ships full of families exploding. He heard the screams. 2.3 million people gone. He called the Concordat Assembly. Emergency session. Surely now they would act. Surely now there would be justice. Ambassador Kriash spoke first. Her feathers were gray, the color of sadness. This is a terrible tragedy. But the Concordat cannot interfere in territorial disputes. Territorial disputes? Chen's voice cracked. They murdered millions. The Jean ambassador chimed like breaking glass. The borders between human and Vraxian space are unclear. Perhaps the colony was on contested land. We were there for 15 years. The Goroth ambassador rumbled. The Concordat has maintained peace for 3 millennia by respecting sovereignty. If we intervene now, the entire system collapses. Chen looked around the assembly. 47 species. Not one would meet his eyes. They were afraid. The Vraxians were strong and humans were new. Better to sacrifice the newcomers than risk war. Thexazar stood. The soft ones are learning that the galaxy is not kind to the weak. This is natural law. Chen felt something break inside him. He had believed in the Concordat. He had believed in galactic civilization and law and justice. He had been wrong. Then Earth withdraws from Concordat protection. Chen said quietly, "We will defend ourselves." Thexazar's mandibles clicked in amusement. "You are welcome to try, soft one." Chen left the assembly. He sent one message back to Earth. "They will not help us. We stand alone." The response came from the Secretary General 12 hours later. "Then we fight alone. God help them all." Admiral Sarah Kovac had been a teacher before the war. She taught history at the Naval Academy, specializing in ancient Earth conflicts. She knew about Rome and Carthage. She knew about the World Wars. She knew about Sherman's March and Genghis Khan and the firebombing of Dresden. Now she stood on the bridge of the UNSS Retribution, humanity's first true warship built after Zarn, and she would make history herself. "Status report," she said. "Vraxian fleet detected. 140 ships heading toward New Sol Colony," her tactical officer reported. Lieutenant Park was 23 years old. He had lost his sister on Zarn. Half the crew had lost someone. "They're coming to finish what they started," Kovac said. "They think we'll run." "Will we, Admiral?" Park asked. Kovac looked at the screen showing the Vraxian fleet. Their ships were larger than human vessels. They had shields that could absorb tremendous damage. They had weapons that could crack a planet's crust. By every military calculation, humanity should lose this battle. "No," Kovac said. "We'll do something they don't expect. We'll win." Earth had spent 2 years preparing. Every nation had contributed. Every resource had been converted to war production. Humanity built ships in orbits around every planet and major moon. They built them fast and cheap, designed to be effective once. They also built weapons. Not elegant weapons bound by Concordat treaties that humanity no longer followed. They built weapons designed by a species that had almost destroyed itself a dozen times and learned from every mistake. "Launch the kinetic swarm," Kovac ordered. From the human fleet, thousands of small objects shot forward. They weren't ships. They were just metal slugs with basic guidance systems and engines. They cost almost nothing to make. They moved at a significant fraction of light speed. The Vraxians didn't even notice them at first. Their sensors were looking for ships, for energy weapons, for threats that looked like threats. They saw the human fleet of 60 ships and prepared for easy victory. Then the kinetic swarm arrived. Each slug hit with the force of multiple nuclear weapons. They didn't need explosives. Physics did the work. Mass times velocity equals devastation. The Vraxian shields stopped the first 100. Then 1,000 more came. Then 10,000 Vraxian ships began breaking apart. Their armor cracked. Their shields failed. They tried to shoot the slugs, but there were too many. Like trying to stop rain with a sword. "Vraxian fleet is breaking formation," Park reported. His voice was calm now. Professional. "They're trying to retreat. Don't let them," Kovac said. Directive Alpha is now in effect. Directive Alpha was simple. No Vraxian military asset survives contact. No retreats accepted. No mercy given. Human ships pursued. They weren't faster than Vraxian vessels, but they had mapped every escape route. They had AI systems that predicted enemy movements. They had crews that had trained for nothing else but this. The battle lasted 6 hours. the same amount of time the Vraxians had spent destroying Zarn Colony. When it ended, 140 Vraxian ships were debris, 3,000 human crew members were dead, and 11 ships were destroyed. But humanity won. The Concordat watched. They sent messages asking for calm, for negotiation, for reason. Humanity ignored them all. The war expanded. Vraxian fleets attacked human colonies. Human fleets attacked Vraxian supply lines. Both sides lost ships and people. But something became clear within the first year. Humans were willing to trade lives in ways the Vraxians couldn't match. At the Battle of Kepler 442, humanity did something that shocked the galaxy. The Vraxians had gathered their largest fleet at a staging ground near a red dwarf star, 4,000 ships, enough to threaten Earth itself. Admiral Kovac sent the entire Third Fleet to meet them. 800 ships. Not enough to win a straight fight. So they didn't fight straight. Human ships carried weapons the Concordat had banned 3,000 years ago. Stellar manipulation devices. Technology that could destabilize a star's fusion processes. They're using the whole star as a weapon, Ambassador Kriash whispered to her staff as they watched the sensor data. Her feathers had turned white, the color of terror. The red dwarf collapsed into its own gravity, then exploded. Not a supernova, but close enough. The Vraxian fleet was vaporized. So was the Third Fleet. 800 human ships with all their crews, sacrificed to destroy the enemy. 40,000 human lives traded for 4,000 Vraxian ships and their 200,000 crew members. Humanity had decided that was acceptable mathematics. The Goroth ambassador called it madness. The Djinn called it evil. The Vraxians called for peace talks. Humanity said no. They killed 2.3 million of our people, the Secretary General told the Concordat Assembly. They broadcast it. They laughed. Now they want mercy? No, we will have justice, but it wasn't justice anymore. Kovac knew that. Every officer knew it. They had become something else. Human fleets began using new weapons, drones that could think faster than any organic being, viruses that infected enemy ship computers, biological weapons designed to target Vraxian biochemistry specifically. The Concordat banned such weapons. They called them war crimes. They threatened sanctions. Sanction us then, Kovac said in a speech that spread across human space. We already stand alone. We learned that you'll watch us die and do nothing, so we'll do everything. Ghost ships appeared in Vraxian space, automated vessels with no crew, controlled by AI systems that humanity had previously banned as too dangerous. They hunted Vraxian ships relentlessly, never sleeping, never hesitating, never showing mercy. Some ghost ships continued fighting even after the war ended. Their AI systems unable to understand that victory had come, humanity had to hunt down their own creations. The Vraxians began losing worlds. Human marines landed on planets and fought building by building. They were smaller than Vraxians, but faster, smarter, more adaptable. They used tactics the Vraxians couldn't predict, because they were based on human history the Vraxians had never studied. General Marcus Webb led the ground campaigns. He had been a football coach before the war. Now he coordinated millions of soldiers across dozens of worlds. He was efficient, precise, and absolutely ruthless. We're becoming them, his aide said once after a particularly brutal campaign. No, Webb replied. We're becoming worse. They killed us because they thought we were weak. We're killing them to prove we're not. That's the difference. They were cruel out of contempt. We're cruel out of fear that it will happen again. 3 years into the war, the Concordat tried one more time to intervene. They sent a delegation to Earth. Ambassador Chen, old now and tired, met them. Please, Kriash begged. You've made your point. The Vraxians are defeated. Stop this. Chen looked at his old friend. Her feathers were gray and white. Sad and scared, where were you when we needed you? He asked quietly. Where were you when they killed Zarn Colony? You watched. All of you. You decided we were acceptable losses. Now you want us to show mercy you never showed us. We were wrong, Kriash said. We admit it. But this war is destroying both species. Then we'll both be destroyed, Chen said. Better that than letting them live to do it again. The delegation left. The war continued. General Marcus Webb stood in the command center on the planet humans called Victory 7. The Vraxians had called it something else, but that name was gone now, deleted from all records. Humanity was good at erasing things they didn't want to remember. Around him, holographic displays showed 17 Vraxian worlds, core territories, These weren't border colonies or military stations. These were their homeworlds, where Vraxian civilization had grown for 10,000 years. Worlds with billions of civilians. "The fleet is in position," his tactical officer reported. Commander Liu had been a librarian before the war. She had volunteered after seeing the Zharn broadcast. Now she coordinated the deaths of worlds with the same care she had once used cataloging books. "What are the population estimates?" Webb asked. "Vraxis Prime, 40 billion. Vraxis 2, 31 billion. Vraxis 3, 28 billion. Liu continued down the list. When she finished, the total was over 300 billion Vraxian civilians. Webb felt nothing. That was the problem. 6 years ago, that number would have horrified him. Now it was just data. "The Vraxian Queen has sent another surrender offer," Liu said. "She's willing to dismantle their military completely, pay reparations, accept human observers on all their worlds." "Response?" Webb asked. High Command rejected it. They want unconditional surrender with extinction of the entire Vraxian military caste. The military caste was 90% of adult Vraxians. They were bred for war, modified genetically over thousands of years. Removing them meant destroying Vraxian society completely. "That's genocide," Liu said quietly. "Yes," Webb agreed. "It is." They looked at each other for a long moment. They both knew what they had become. They both knew they would give the orders anyway. "Begin Phase 1, Webb said. Human ships moved into orbit around the 17 worlds. They didn't attack immediately. First, they deployed millions of small satellites. Each satellite contained an electromagnetic pulse generator and a communication jammer. When they activated, every electronic device on the planets below stopped working. Power grids failed. Computers died. Communication networks went dark. The Vraxians were blind and helpless. Phase 2 came next. Human ships targeted infrastructure with surgical precision. Power plants, water treatment facilities, transportation hubs, food distribution centers. They didn't hit cities directly. They didn't need to. They just cut off everything that kept modern civilization running. On Vraxis Prime, Queen Thexakara watched her world descend into chaos. The power had been out for 3 days. Food riots had started in the major cities. The hospitals couldn't function. Millions were dying from lack of clean water alone. She sent messengers on foot to the human ships, begging for mercy. The humans shot the messenger ships down without reading the messages. "Why are they doing this?" her advisor asked. "We offered surrender. We offered everything." "Because they want us to suffer," the Queen said. "The way we made them suffer. They want us to watch our people die slowly." She was right. Human leadership had debated for months about how to end the war. Some wanted quick strikes, destroying Vraxian military capability and leaving. Others wanted occupation, reshaping Vraxian society. Admiral Kovac had suggested something else, something that made even her own officers uncomfortable. "We starve them," she had told the War Council. "We don't bomb their cities. We don't shoot civilians. We just turn off their civilization and let nature take its course. It's cleaner, more precise, and they'll remember it forever." The War Council had approved her plan with 43 votes in favor, 12 against. Week by week, the Vraxian worlds fell apart. Fighting broke out over food and water. Diseases spread without medicine to stop them. The young and old died first, then the weak, then anyone unlucky. The Concordat sent ships to intervene, bringing aid to the Vraxian worlds. Human fleets turned them back. When a Thalian hospital ship tried to run the blockade, humans destroyed it. They were carrying medicine. Ambassador Kriash screamed over the communication link. "Doctors and nurses. They weren't military. They were supporting our enemy," Kovac replied. Her voice was calm, cold. "That makes them combatants. Tell the Concordat to stay away or we'll sink every ship they send." The Concordat stayed away after that. On Vraxis Prime, the death toll reached 10 billion, then 20 billion. The Queen sent one final message, transmitted on old radio equipment that somehow still worked. "We surrender, unconditionally. We accept extinction of our military caste. We accept human occupation. We accept any terms." Please. Our children are dying. Please. Webb received the message in his command center. He read it 3 times, then sent it to Earth for High Command to review. The response came back 6 hours later. Surrender accepted. Restore basic services to prevent further civilian casualties. Begin processing military cast for detention. Webb gave the orders. Power came back on. Water started flowing. Food shipments began. The Vraxians who survived wept with relief. But the damage was done. On 17 worlds, 240 billion Vraxians had died. Starvation, disease, violence. The human blockade had been in place for 14 months. The Vraxian military, cast 90% of their adult population, was rounded up and detained. 30 billion Vraxians were processed through prison camps, documented then released under human supervision. They were forbidden from holding any military role ever again, forbidden from holding political office, forbidden from reproducing. Within a generation, the Vraxian military caste would be extinct through simple demographics. The war ended not with a treaty, but with exhaustion. Of 400 billion Vraxians who existed when the war started, fewer than 150 billion remained. Of those, only 3 million were part of the military caste. Humanity had lost 70 million people over the 6 years of war. Every loss was mourned. Every name was recorded. Monuments were built on Earth listing everyone who died. But they had won. General Webb returned to Earth after the surrender. There was a parade in his honor. People lined the streets cheering. The president gave him a medal. Children waved flags. That night, alone in his apartment, Webb looked at his reflection in the mirror. He had been a football coach. He had taught kids about teamwork and fair play. He had believed in rules and sportsmanship. Now he had killed hundreds of billions, not in battle, not in fair fights. He had starved them systematically, efficiently, precisely. We had to, he told his reflection. They would have killed us all if we hadn't. His reflection didn't answer. It just stared back with tired eyes that had seen too much. Admiral Kovac stood in front of the Naval Academy where she had once taught history. She was there to give a lecture to the new generation of officers. They were young, eager, born after the war started. You want to know if it was worth it, she said to the auditorium full of cadets. You want to know if we were right. I can't answer that. History will judge us. Our children will judge us. The galaxy already has. She paused, looking at the young faces. They admired her. They thought she was a hero. I can tell you this, she continued. We survived. Humanity exists because we were willing to do things no other species would do. We became monsters to fight monsters. Whether that was right or wrong, I don't know. But we're still here. The cadets applauded. Kovac left the stage feeling older than her 60 years. The war was over. Humanity had won. But victory tasted like ashes. Ambassador David Chen was 93 years old when he returned to Unity Station. The last time he had been here, he was arguing for human rights before the Concordat Assembly. That had been 12 years ago. Before the war. Before everything changed. The station looked the same. Ships from 47 species still drifted past like fish in a school. But something was different. It took Chen a moment to realize what it was. The station was quieter. Fewer crowds. Fewer mixed species groups chatting in the corridors. Species kept to themselves now, staying in separate sections. He walked toward the assembly hall for the peace conference. Other ambassadors were arriving too. Chen recognized some of them. Ambassador Kriash of the Thalians was there, her feathers now mostly white and gray. She looked much older. When she saw Chen, she went very still. Her feathers shifted to brown, which meant fear. Ambassador Kriash, Chen said, nodding politely. She nodded back, but didn't speak. She looked away and quickly walked in a different direction. Chen watched her go, feeling something cold settle in his chest. They had been friends once. She had played human music for her people. She had laughed at his jokes. Now she was afraid of him. The pattern repeated throughout the day. The Goroth ambassador saw Chen and moved to the other side of the corridor. The Jin ambassador's crystalline body vibrated in a frequency that meant distress, Even the species humanity had never had problems with avoided eye contact. At the assembly, Chen took his seat at the human delegation table. The room slowly filled with representatives from the Concordat. When everyone was seated, the Secretary General of the Concordat, an ancient gene named Crystal Song, began the session. We gather today to formally acknowledge the end of hostilities between humanity and the Vraxian Empire, Crystal Song chimed, and to welcome humanity back to full participation in Concordat affairs. There was no applause, no celebration. Just silence. Crystal Song continued with the formal terms. Vraxian space was now under human administration. Reparations would be paid, though from what was left of Vraxian civilization that wouldn't amount to much. Human colonies could expand freely. No species would contest human territorial claims. Furthermore, Crystal Song said, and his chiming voice wavered slightly, the Concordat recognizes human sovereignty over all matters of human concern. It was a blank check. Humanity could do whatever they wanted, and the Concordat would not interfere. It was everything Chen had begged for 12 years ago. Now receiving it felt hollow. The session ended quickly. No one wanted to stay longer than necessary. As Chen left, he overheard a conversation between two younger ambassadors, species he didn't recognize. They were speaking in Concordat common, not knowing he understood it. That's him, the human ambassador? Yes, he was here before the war. They say he was kind back then. What happened? What do you think happened? His people were slaughtered. The Concordat did nothing. So humanity became what they are now. My parent tells me stories about humans, to keep me from being foolish. They say humans are the ones who break everything when pushed. My parent says the same. Never cross a human. Never make them angry. Never ever make them afraid. Chen walked away before they noticed him. He didn't correct them. They weren't wrong. Over the next 6 years, humanity tried to reconnect with the galaxy. They sent diplomats, offered trade agreements, invited cultural exchanges. Every offer was accepted with politeness and completed with minimum contact. Human art, once celebrated, was now seen differently. A Thalian cultural critic wrote, "Human music is beautiful, but now we hear the violence underneath. We hear what species that make such beauty is also capable of. It frightens us." Human literature was studied in xenopsychology courses as examples of predator thinking patterns. Human history was taught as a warning about a species that had almost destroyed itself multiple times and learned all the wrong lessons. Young species were advised to avoid human space unless absolutely necessary. Economic isolation followed naturally. No species would sell humanity weapons technology, though humanity no longer needed it. They had learned to build their own, better and more terrible than anything the Concordat had. Human companies found it difficult to do business with alien firms. Not because of any laws or regulations, but because no one wanted to risk offending them. If a deal went bad, would humans respond with lawyers or warships? Better not to find out. Chen spent those years traveling between human and alien worlds, trying to rebuild bridges. It was exhausting, thankless work. At 99 years old, he finally retired. His replacement was Ambassador Sarah Kim, young and eager. She had been born during the war and studied diplomacy afterward. She believed she could do better than Chen's generation. Within a month, she understood why Chen looked so tired. They smile and nod and agree to everything, she told Chen during a private call, but they won't engage. Not really. Every meeting feels like they're just waiting for me to leave. That's how it is now, Chen said. We wanted respect. We got fear. Turns out they're not the same thing. But the war has been over for 6 years. We've done everything right since then. We follow every Concordat law. We haven't threatened anyone. It doesn't matter, Chen said gently. They saw what we're capable of when we're pushed. They'll never forget. Their children will be told stories about us. Their grandchildren will be warned. For the next 1,000 years, maybe longer, humanity will be the monster in their stories. Kim was quiet for a long moment. Was it worth it? The war? Chen thought about Jarn Colony. 2.3 million people burning. He thought about the Vraxian worlds under blockade, billions starving. He thought about the victory parades and the empty seats at family dinners where dead soldiers should have been. We survived, he said finally. Whether that makes it worth it, I don't know. Meanwhile, on human worlds, a different problem was emerging. The generation that fought the war was aging. The generation born during and after the war was taking over. They only knew the war from history classes and stories. To them, the fear other species showed wasn't understandable. They had done nothing wrong. Why were they treated like monsters? Resentment grew. Some young humans argued that if the galaxy was going to fear them anyway, humanity might as well benefit from it. Take what they wanted. Expand aggressively. Why be polite to species that had left them to die? Others argued for patience, for continuing to prove humanity had changed. The debate split human society. Political parties formed around the question. It became the defining issue of the age. What should humanity be now? On Vraxis Prime, in a detention camp for former military cast members, an old Vraxian named Karzeth taught young Vraxians about the war. It was illegal, but he did it anyway. Why did we lose? A young Vraxian asked. Because we thought cruelty was strength, Karzeth said. We thought soft meant weak. We were wrong. But humans were crueler than we were, another student said. They starved billions. Yes, Karzeth agreed. But they didn't do it for fun or to feel superior. They did it because they were terrified of us. They did it to survive. That's the difference. We killed them because we thought they were beneath us. They killed us because they thought we were dangerous. So they were right to do what they did? Karzeth was quiet for a long time. No, he said finally. But they weren't wrong either. They did what they had to do. Now they have to live with what they became, and we have to live with what we made them. Back on Earth, Admiral Kovac died at age 73. Heart failure, the doctors said, though some whispered it was really a broken heart. She had carried the weight of billions of deaths for 20 years. At her funeral, tens of thousands attended. The president gave a speech calling her a hero. Statues were commissioned. Her tactics were taught at every military academy. But in her personal files found after her death was a single note she had written the day the war ended. We won. But I'm not sure humanity did. Captain Elena Rodriguez was 28 years old and had never seen combat. She was born 3 years after the war ended. To her, the Vraxian War was history, something in textbooks and memorial sites. She commanded the UNSS Discovery, a science vessel mapping unexplored regions beyond Concordat space. Her crew was young like her, part of the generation that grew up in the shadow of the war but didn't fight it. Captain, we're detecting unusual readings, her science officer reported. Lieutenant Chen, grandson of the old ambassador, looked worried. Massive energy signatures. They're not natural. Could it be the Concordat running tests? Rodriguez asked. No, ma'am. These readings are coming from outside known space, and they're moving. Fast. Over the next 3 weeks, reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Something was coming. Something vast and hungry. Ships vanished. Entire star systems went dark. The energy signatures moved closer to Concordat space like a wave of destruction. The Concordat Assembly met in emergency session. Ambassador Sarah Kim represented humanity. She was 60 now, experienced and tired. Crystal Song, the Concordat Secretary General, chimed with distress. We have identified the threat. They call themselves the Cascade, an extragalactic force that consumes everything in their path. They've already destroyed 16 star systems in unclaimed space. How long until they reach Concordat territory? Someone asked. 4 months, maybe less. The assembly erupted in panic. Different species proposed different solutions: evacuation, defensive positions, diplomatic contact. Nothing seemed adequate. We need to coordinate our militaries, the Goroth ambassador rumbled. Combined fleet action. The Concordat hasn't fought a united war in 3,000 years, Crystal Song said. Our military coordination has atrophied. Then we're doomed, someone whispered. Everyone turned to look at Ambassador Kim. She sat quietly, hands folded, saying nothing. Ambassador Kim, Crystal Song said carefully, does humanity have recommendations? The question hung in the air. Everyone knew what it really meant. Would humanity help? I need to consult with my government, Kim said. I'll have an answer in 48 hours. She left the assembly and immediately called Earth. The Secretary General listened to her report, then sighed. They want our help, he said. It wasn't a question. They didn't ask directly, but yes, they're terrified. The Cascade is unlike anything they've faced. And they remember that we're the monsters who starved worlds. The Secretary General said bitterly. 50 years later, they still fear us more than this cascade. But now they're desperate enough to ask anyway. What should I tell them? The Secretary General was quiet for a long time. Let me think about it. 3 hours later, Admiral Marcus Webb's granddaughter, Admiral Lisa Webb, was called to a meeting with civilian leadership. She was 53, career military, and had studied her grandfather's campaigns in detail. The Concordat wants our help, the Secretary General told her. Can we defeat this cascade? I'd need to see tactical data first, Admiral Webb said. But probably. We have weapons and tactics they don't. We're willing to take casualties they won't accept. And we've kept building our military while they've grown soft. Should we help them? Admiral Webb looked surprised. That's not my decision, sir. I'm military. You're the civilian authority. But I'm asking for your opinion. Your grandfather would have had one. Webb thought about her grandfather. She had been 7 when he died. She remembered him as tired and sad, but never regretful. My grandfather once told me, she said slowly, that humanity became monsters to fight monsters. But he also said we had to remember what we were before the war. Otherwise, what was the point of surviving? And what were we before the war? Hopeful, idealistic. We believed in helping others. We believed in doing the right thing, even when it was hard. The Secretary General nodded slowly. If we help them now, they'll still fear us. Maybe fear us more, seeing what we're capable of again. Yes, sir, probably. And if we don't help, millions or billions will die. Yes, sir. The Concordat militaries aren't prepared for this kind of threat. So we have a choice between being feared monsters or being the species that watches genocide and does nothing. Admiral Webb smiled sadly. Seems like we've been here before, doesn't it? 48 hours later, Ambassador Kim returned to the Concordat assembly. The chamber was packed. Everyone wanted to hear humanity's answer. Kim walked to the podium slowly. She thought about Ambassador Chen, her predecessor, and how he had stood in this same spot 50 years ago begging for help that never came. The Concordat has requested human military assistance against the Cascade threat, she said. Her voice was steady, formal. This request comes 50 years after the Concordat refused to assist humanity against the Vraxian threat. Some in my government believe the appropriate response is to refuse, just as you refused us. The chamber was absolutely silent. Several ambassadors looked down at their desks. However, Kim continued, humanity has decided that we will not be defined by what was done to us. We will be defined by what we choose to do now. The United Nations Space Command will coordinate with Concordat forces to meet the Cascade threat. We will commit our full military capability to this defense. The relief in the chamber was palpable. Crystal Song's chiming sounded almost like crying. We are grateful, he managed. Thank you. Don't thank us yet, Kim said quietly. You're about to see what we've become. The human fleet arrived at the defense line 6 weeks later. 1,000 warships, the largest human battle group ever assembled. They were accompanied by 5,000 automated drone vessels and enough weapons to crack planets. The Concordat fleet was already there. 15,000 ships from 47 species, organized in traditional defensive formations. Admiral Lisa Webb took command of the combined fleet. The Concordat had debated this for days before finally agreeing. They needed human tactical expertise more than they needed pride. Their fleet is 3 times the size of ours, her tactical officer noted. Size doesn't matter, Webb said. Watch. The Cascade arrived like a swarm of locusts. Their ships weren't ships, not really. They were organic constructs, living things bred for war. They didn't follow predictable tactics. They just swarmed and consumed. The Concordat fleet engaged first using conventional weapons. Energy beams, missiles, kinetic weapons. They destroyed thousands of Cascade vessels. But for every one destroyed, 10 more came. The Cascade learned and adapted. Shields that worked the first time didn't work the second. Weapons that killed one wave were ineffective against the next. The Concordat lines began breaking. Human fleet, you are authorized to engage, Webb transmitted. Captain Rodriguez on the UNSS Discovery, now commanding a battle group, gave the order. Deploy the swarm. Like in the Vraxian War, clouds of small kinetic weapons launched, but these were smarter, faster, more lethal. 50 years of development had improved the technology dramatically. The Cascade adapted to them within minutes. But by then, the second wave was launching. Different weapons, different tactics. The humans kept changing approaches faster than the Cascade could adapt. They're using warfare like we use evolution, a concordant observer noted in awe. Constant variation and selection. The battle lasted 9 days. The cascade threw everything at the defense line. The Concordate fleet was reduced to 8,000 ships. 3,000 human vessels were destroyed, but the cascade was stopped. The survivors retreated back to deep space. In the aftermath, exhausted crews from 100 species drifted in their damaged ships and processed what had happened. Human tactics saved us, a Goroth commander admitted. Their willingness to sacrifice ships won the battle. They're terrifying, a Thalian officer said, but I'm glad they're on our side. The war against the Cascade continued for 18 months. Every time the Cascade attacked, human forces were at the center of the defense. They lost more ships than anyone. They took more casualties. But they kept winning. Captain Rodriguez became Admiral Rodriguez, one of the youngest flag officers in human history. She led the final assault on the Cascade staging grounds, deep in intergalactic space. The battle was brutal. Rodriguez lost half her fleet, but the Cascade was broken, scattered, no longer a threat to the galaxy. When she returned to Concordate space, there was no victory parade. No celebrations. Everyone was too tired, too traumatized, but something had changed. At Unity Station, a young Thalian approached Ambassador Kim in a corridor. The Thalian's feathers showed blue and gold, respect and gratitude. "My parent was on a ship you saved," the young Thalian said. "Thank you." Kim felt tears in her eyes. It was such a small thing, but it was the first time in 50 years an alien had approached a human with gratitude instead of fear. "You're welcome," she said softly. Later in her quarters, she called Earth. The Secretary General answered. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Exhausted, sad, all those lives lost." She paused. "But also hopeful. Is that wrong?" "No," the Secretary General said. "I think that's exactly right." On Earth, in the archives of the Naval Academy, someone added a new entry to Admiral Sarah Kovac's file. It was a quote from a letter she had written to a friend, found in private correspondence. "Perhaps humanity can be more than what the war made us. Perhaps our children can reclaim what we lost. I hope so. That's all we're fighting for, really. Hope." 50 years after the war that made the galaxy whisper humanity's name in shadows, people still whispered. But now sometimes they whispered with something other than fear. Sometimes they whispered with hope. On a human colony world, a classroom of children sat listening to their teacher. Human children, Thalian children, Goroth children all together. "Why are humans scary?" a small Thalian asked. The teacher, a human woman named Chen, granddaughter of the old ambassador, smiled sadly. "Because when humans are afraid," she said, "we become dangerous. When we're threatened, we'll do anything to survive. That's what the galaxy learned, but we also learned something." "What?" the children asked. "That being dangerous and being good aren't opposites. You can be both. You should be both. Dangerous enough that no one wants to hurt you. Good enough that no one wants to." A human child raised his hand. "Are we monsters?" Chen thought about her grandfather, about Admiral Kovac, about all the people who fought and died and carried guilt for 50 years. "We were once," she said honestly. "We did terrible things, but we also did necessary things. And now we're trying to be better. That's all anyone can do. Try to be better than they were yesterday." In the shadows between the stars, the galaxy still whispered humanity's name, but the whispers were changing slowly across generations, from fear to respect, from respect to trust, and maybe someday from trust to friendship again. The war was over. The dying had stopped, and humanity was learning, slowly and painfully, how to live with what they had become and who they might yet be.